As price of food items continue to rise in the country, President Buhari meets with the National Food Security Council to avert a possible food crisis. But the question is, how soon will this meeting reflect in the market? And the mission to resolve squabbles within the APC begins in earnest as the Vice President, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, leads the charge as the party seeks to align its objectives with electoral promises made to Nigerians. Hello everyone and welcome to the program. This is Politics Today, live on Channels Television. I am Kayode Okikiolu, sitting in for Seun Okinbaloye. Well, a lot of Nigerians are not smiling to the markets anymore. As at the last count, the prices of food, that is the food index, rose by 15.48% in July, and it's expected to even rise the more in the coming days. Well, this is, of course, coming as the nation tries to recover from the economic effect of COVID-19. And there are fears that we might be heading towards a food crisis. But then the president is showing concern. In fact, earlier today, President Muhammadu Buhari presided over the National Food Security Council, or rather the National Food Council held at the State House, Abuja, where he said the COVID-19 pandemic exposed the level of preparedness of nations to shocks of food security. President Buhari notes that there is need for more efforts to increase food production and self-sufficiency, with an assurance that the federal government will continue to promote policies that favor investments in the agricultural sector. Well, the president also said the federal government's wisdom in promoting self-sufficiency over the years has helped in significantly averting a food crisis despite the COVID-19 pandemic. Well, I imagine the question on the lips of Nigerians will be, how soon will they begin to feel the effect of these policies in the markets? Well, time will tell. Well, this will, of course, form a major part of our discussion on the program tonight. But first, let's remind you that this Sunday, Channels Television and its partners will be putting together a governorship debate in Edo State to put to task those who are seeking the highest office in the state. It is this Sunday, September the 13th, 2020, and you can be a part of those who will decide those who will be at the debate by being a part of the Edo Governorship Debate poll, which is on our website. That's channelstv.com. The poll is powered by the Civil Society Elections Situation Room. Don't forget, you can be a part of this by going to our website, channelstv.com, and selecting the candidates you'd like to see at the coming governorship debates. Don't forget, the date is Sunday, September the 13th. Well, so much expectations really from this APC government, and rightly so, because the party coming into power actually campaigned on three major promises: fixing the economy, fighting corruption, and quelling insecurity. Well, that was the first time. Now, for the president's second term, it metamorphosed into 9 priority areas, which include stabilizing macroeconomy, achieving food and food security, ensuring energy sufficiency, improving insecurity, and more. But the ruling party has been embroiled in some internal squabbles, which appear to be distracting it from fulfilling its promises to Nigerians. And to try to resolve that, Vice President Yemi Osinbajo today chaired the first meeting of the APC Tripartite Consultative Committee of the Executive, Legislature, and the leadership of the APC at the State House in Abuja. Also present at the meeting were members of the committee, including the Senate President Ahmed Ibrahim Lawal, the Deputy Senate President Ovie Omo-Agege, amongst other members. So let's get into our conversation tonight. We're going to be taking a look at the current governance policies, what you feel, and how they meet how we move forward. A couple of issues we'll be discussing tonight, and we have joining us on the program Mr. Niyi Akinseju, who is the chairman Buhari Media Group. He joins us from our Abuja studio this evening, and also Mr. Austin Okai, right next to him, is a member of the PDP and the rights activist. Good evening, gentlemen. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having us.
Well, Mr. Akishiju, I'd like to begin with you. I recall during the ministerial retreat, the president specifically told those that attended that, you know what, you need to tell your story the more. Tell the people what we're achieving. Now, that's on one hand. On the other hand is what people experience on a daily basis. For example, they go to the market and they see the price of food. So the question is, what would you tell? How do you tell the story of what the government is doing to those people who feel it on a daily basis?
Well, the truth of the matter, when we need to talk about how Nigerians are being impacted, you know, on matters of food especially, one would have to contextualize it within the bracket, you know, of the COVID-19 pandemic. The truth of the matter is that we are just coming out of what I call an equivalent of a force majeure, you know, either in terms of impact and effect. You have a situation where farmers could not go to farms, where farming inputs could not be assessed by farmers, and even where some harvests were made, you could not go to markets. Getting into the camp market was controlled. So moving from farm gate to city gates were constrained to. So I don't think it's appropriate to measure the outlook of things, you know, and of course what we are going through now against the background of the COVID-19 pandemic constraints. So, but the important thing is what is the president going forward. But we need to also remark the fact that during this same COVID-19 pandemic, the countries that we depended upon before the coming of the president, and of course before is a philosophical assertion that we must eat what we grow and grow what we eat. You know, countries like Thailand, like India, like Vietnam, that we depended on for food, actually shut their borders and stopped exportation of food, you know, outside their jurisdiction. Now, what you want to imagine is if we had not started the processes, you know, of galvanizing our farmers and, of course, our agricultural sector into self-activation, you can only imagine what would have happened to us.
Okay,
yes,
Mr. Akishiju,
we all go to
if I can comment now,
realize the fact that
if I can comment now, just a moment. I'd like to get Mr. Alkai also to bring in his opening thoughts. But I'll ask you when we come back from Mr. Alkai how you want the government to, or how you want the people to measure this government's achievement. But Mr. Alkai, do you think that this was inevitable?
The price of the commodity.
Oh yes,
It is becoming difficult for Nigeria now to even get 3 meals per day. And this has nothing to do with the issue of coronavirus to me. Because just as my friend said, we have stopped importation of rice from Thailand even before the pandemic comes on board. It is about our own internal policy. And the president has admitted to the fact. Today he had a meeting with some governors over the skyrocketing prices of goods and services in the country. And this is a reaction to the increase in petroleum and the poor price of the petroleum. There is no magic anybody can do. There is no miracle anybody can perform. When the policy of a government, we are battling with the policies of assorting, and definitely there is no other option than the market demand to react, than the market to react to the government policy. These are the punishment that we are facing as a result of the president's policy on poor price increase, which come at a very wrong times. It comes at a very wrong time. Therefore, it was avoidable mistake from the side of the government to have engaged in a poor price at this very critical situation of our country.
You know, just to put it in context, the inflation has been on the rise for over 20 months. So, I mean, the fuel price was, I mean, recently increased, and electricity tariff, which a lot of people have referred to. But, you know, I asked earlier that, I mean, the argument has been that this was inevitable. COVID-19. And, they show you indices. Other countries' economy actually performed worse. For example, South Africa's economy declined by 51%. And, it goes on like that. So when you look at those indices, do you still think that maybe we should cut the government some slack?
Definitely. The nation you mentioned, like South Africa and co, are into policy that will make livelihood easier for the citizens. That will make livelihood easier for the citizens. Before the advent of coronavirus, we're battling with how to control the food shortages in the country. Of course, it is a fact because of the government agricultural policy. And now, we have making the situation worsen by the happening of the government policy. South Africa is creating so many palliative measures to cushion the effect of economic downturn, which was as a result of the coronavirus, as the same thing to Ghana and other neighboring countries. But what else do we have to do in this? What do we have? What have we put in place to cushion this effect? We are battling with the reality, the effect, the multiplier effect of the coronavirus, then coming in the introduction of this very policy, which has making everything so difficult. I think the government has to be blamed in all aspects of the present economic situation.
Okay, Mr. Okai.
Justify this for.
Okay, well, I'm not sure you got the context that I was trying to paint there, but let me take you back to Mr. Akishiju. We'll come back to some of these other issues you raised in a moment. But, the president last year said that, we have a mandate. Let's lift 100 million Nigerians out of poverty in 10 years. A year has passed, and by my calculations, the little knowledge of math I know, about 10 million people should have been lifted out of poverty in the past 1 year. Has that happened?
Well, I quickly want to just correct the impression by my friend here. It has become a tradition of play, with people from PDP. They don't understand, and they are yet to forget that they are the major crisis originator of this country. And whatever we are going through now, we can only thank God, for President Buhari. Now, talking about 100 million, that's a target set by the president himself. And as I always said, there was a time in this country that the National Bureau of Statistics, conducted a survey of poverty rates in this country. And we had 112 million Nigerians living under $1 a day, and that was in 2010. Now, by 2015, there was no head count, there was no poverty head count. So we want to believe that, of course, that would have increased because there was no specific focused programs, targeting the very poor and the vulnerable in this country. What the PDP had been doing all over, was just to create scams, just creating abnormalities within our economic profiles. Now, between 2016 and now, we've had more than 12 specific programs focused at the poor. And by 2019, when the MBS did another head count, they told us that we have reduced from 112 million people living under $1 to about 86 million. So what you need to do is just to subtract that figure. They went from 86 from 112 million, and you know that, of course, we are in the process. I believe that over these 10 years, by God's grace, we will have an APC government always in place for the next 10 years, and it will be to the benefit of Nigerians. Don't forget that we are coming from a disadvantaged position, talking about what the status quo when the APC came into government. What was the status quo?
Okay, Mr. Akishiju, we'll need to go to break now. We'll need to go to break now. I mean, you gave me math to do, and I did it. 112 million minus 86 million, that's 26 million, I guess. If you divide that by 10 years, which you said from 2010 to 2019, that's about 3 million per year. But we'll come back, really, and talk about specific areas. We'll speak to the issues so Nigerians watching can situate these things. Please join us again, gentlemen.
President Muhammadu Buhari has received in audience the newly re-elected president of the African Development Bank, AFDB, Dr. Akinwumi Adesina, at State House, Abuja. While congratulating him on the second and final term, the president also commended Dr. Adesina for his support for Africa in general and Nigeria in particular, stressing that the infrastructural deficits the country has in roads, rail, power could not be overcome without support. Dr. Adesina had overcome stiff opposition last month to win an unprecedented 100% votes from the regionals and non-regionals that make up the bank. The Chief Justice of Nigeria, Justice Tanko Mohammed, has administered an oath on 85 judges that will handle governorship election petition cases in Edo and Ondo states, as well as other by-elections across the country. During the ceremony at the Supreme Court, Justice Mohammed urged the tribunal judges to conduct their affairs within the ambit of the law, warning that he will not condone any act of recklessness, abuse of power, and public trust. He stressed the need for the judges to rise above every sentiment that could play out in the course of their adjudication in the tribunal. Meanwhile, less than 1.5 million voters are expected to participate in the forthcoming governorship election in Ondo State. That's according to the Ondo State Resident Electoral Commissioner, Mr. Rufus Akeju. Speaking at a virtual meeting with members of the Nigeria Civil Society Situation Room, the Ondo Rec says that INEC in the state had distributed 1,478,460 permanent voter cards during the 2019 general election. Members of the Civil Society Situation Room are asking the electoral umpire to pay special attention to security, results collation, and conduct of security personnel as the October 10 governorship poll in Ondo State gets closer.
Well, let's get back to the conversation. We'll still have with us Mr. Niyi Akinsheju, the chairman, Buhari Media Group, and Mr. Austin Okai, member of the PDP and right activist. They both join us from our Abuja studios. Gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Now, Mr. Okai, we don't have a lot of time left, but would like to proffer solutions, because clearly we are in a major challenge that is not just affecting the PDP or the APC, but it's affecting Nigerians as a whole. And I'm just thinking, with what you have seen, I mean, the fact that our revenue has dwindled over time. You can talk about the impact of COVID-19. Just imagine that the PDP, for example, hypothetically speaking, was in power. What would you have done different?
Yeah, definitely. The whole thing has to be about the government with the people's in mind. What PDP would have done can 100% be different from exactly what is happening today. For instance, look at the approaches to the palliative that was handed over to Nigeria during the coronavirus epidemic, which we are still battling. You can see the whole thing. The ordinary Nigerian do not feel it. It was the PDP government who have created a reporting on the medium by which the president will monitor the complete implementation or the policy that will ensure that the palliative handed over to Nigerians should affect the concerned citizens, not the one that has been hijacked by some people, the big men in the parties and the presidency. Secondly, the agricultural policy of this government, everything has been made tutorial. During the time of the President Jonathan, you are aware how the present AFDB president, Akinwumi, the rice the enormous rice that the country was able to produce locally, we patronize local-made product. We give agricultural the major needed government attention and requirement, and all those are lacking today. We have stopped various importation without putting in place anything that will cushion the effect of it. Today, you have seen the president has announced the 18% increment in the salaries for the civil servant. So many states are not adhering to it. They are not paying. They are not paying. So the multiplier effect of it are so enormous. You talk of currently as I'm talking to you, the medical health workers are on strike, the health workers that are not non-medicals, the hazard has not been paid. So everything about the government is made tutorial. There's no strong policy put in place to supervise every pronouncement of this government. It's not about mere talk or addressing the media that is what the government is doing. It is about implementing the government policy down to the grassroots that the commoners, the ordinary Nigerians will feel the impact, and that is lacking. Today, people are
Mr.
battling to
Okai,
eat.
let's
People
get
are battling
Mr.
to afford the
Akishiju's
common.
closing thoughts on this. I mean, you have made those points. And Mr. Akishiju, in addition to your response to some of the issues he has raised, clearly a lot of people are still not happy with the way palliatives were shared. So, I mean, you could respond to some of the issues he raised and also touch on the palliatives.
It raised so many obvious lies. You know, it's as if my friend was living in a different Nigeria before 2015. Because what we know by facts and statistics is that in 2014, our GDP went as high as 6.22% because, of course, there was huge increase in the price of crude oil and all that. But by the second quarter of 2015, the GDP fell to a low of 2.35. Please go and fact check. And that was PDP, the same PDP government. And that was the quarter the President Buhari, got into office. Now, what I'm trying to say essentially is that if PDP had been in office at this time, Nigeria would have been in turmoil. Don't forget, and I need to clarify this, some PDP wicked liars had come on here consistently to say that
Mr. Akishiju,
the President
please be
Muhammadu
careful.
Buhari
Please be careful with your
collected
language.
so much. Please,
Mr.
this is
Akishiju,
important.
no, I'd
Please,
like to put this.
This is important.
I'd like to put this out there.
It's
Please,
of public interest that we
please be
settle
careful
it.
the kind of language you use.
In 2015. Oh, thank you. Sorry, I'll adopt that. In 2015, Nigeria's debt stock in dollar was $63 billion. $63 billion. By March this year, 2020, it went up to $79 billion. When you subtract $63 billion from $79 billion, it will add up to 16-point-something billion.
Mr. Akishiju,
as at March 2020,
I'm afraid,
that was what the Buhari government had taken in terms
I'm afraid
of loan.
I'm afraid we have to anchor at this point.
Let us figure.
I'm afraid we have to anchor at this point, Mr.
85.
Akishiju. But clearly this is an ongoing conversation.
Right, okay.
And I'd like to appreciate you, gentlemen, Mr. Niyi Akishiju, the chairman, Buhari Media Group, and Mr. Austin Okai, member of the PDP and right activist. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts. And we definitely wish Nigeria the very best.
Thank you.
Well, that's our show for tonight, everyone. Many thanks for watching. I'm Kayode Okikiolu.